Hey everybody, it's Alex, founder and CEO at Motoroso, and in this video, we're going to be doing a how-to installation guide for this brand new R1 Concepts big brake kit on our 2017 Ford Focus RS. We're going to a 6-piston front and a 4-piston rear, and that's an upgrade from the 4-piston front, single-piston rear that comes on this car, and it's going to be a massive improvement in the already exceptional braking performance on this Focus RS. And we made a separate video all about this kit. We'll put a link to that right here, and you can check that link in the description as well. Watch that video, learn all about what R1 Concepts offers. Highly customizable, and as you can see, we've chosen that blue color that's going to be consistent with the rest of our build. Now, this installation, pretty straightforward as far as getting the old system off and the new rotors and calipers on and hooking up the stainless steel braided brake lines. A little bit messy with that brake fluid that's going to be leaking all over the place, but it's not too bad. And of course, once it's all back together, you're going to have to bleed the brakes and then do your bedding in procedure. And we'll talk a little bit about that at the end, but let's get rolling on the front install right now. Let's start our install by getting the car up on the jacks and removing the wheels. Disconnect the brake lines from their mounting points on the coilover to give yourself some slack. Remove the 2 main caliper bolts. Now place the caliper somewhere stable so that it's not hanging from the brake line. Remove your OEM rotor. Now you might need to loosen it with a mallet if it's not been removed recently. Ours was pretty rusted. Remove the heat shield by removing the 3 10mm bolts. If you have rust buildup like us, use a wire brush and a little bit of brake clean to clean the surface. Now you're ready to install your R1 Concepts components. Apply Loctite to the caliper bracket mounting bolts. Install the R1 caliper mounting bracket by threading the bolts through using a shim between the mounting points and the bracket. Make sure the caliper is spaced evenly over the rotor left and right. If it needs to be adjusted, use the supplied shims between the bracket and the mounting point on the spindle. Torque these bolts to 165 foot-pounds. Place your new rotor with the curved vanes leaning towards the forward rotation of the car. Now you can set the new R1 caliper in place with a single bolt on the top of the bracket. Install your caliper bolts with a little bit of Loctite and tighten them to 103 foot-pounds of torque. Remove the plug from the banjo bolt mounting location. Loosely install the banjo bolt on the back of the caliper, but don't torque this down yet. Using an 11mm box wrench, initially loosen but don't remove the OEM brake line. Now remove the clip from the OEM brake line mount by pulling it out with a set of pliers and then prying it out with a flathead screwdriver. Now you can finish removing the OEM brake line. This is going to leak, so you might want to put down a paper towel before you do all these steps. Now you can install your new stainless steel braided brake line through the top of the OEM mount and place the lock nut on the other side of that mount, tightening it with a 17mm and a 19mm box wrench. Now you can install the brake fluid supply line into the R1 stainless steel braided line and then tighten down the fastening nut with an 11mm box wrench. Mount the R1 brake line to the mounting clip on the coilover body. Now torque your banjo bolt to 177 inch-pounds of torque. Make sure not to over-tighten this because it can break. Lastly, check the routing of the brake line to make sure it doesn't impact any major components, and then tighten the nut that connects the banjo bolt to the stainless steel braided line. Ooh, there it is, all ready to go. As you can see, if you follow that sequence that we did, the install goes pretty quickly and with not that much mess if you do the hose in the sequence that we suggested there. Now, of course, you're gonna wanna rinse, lather, repeat for the left side and then move on to the rear. Now, if this doesn't look exactly like your car, it's probably because we've got these ST Suspensions XTA coilovers. Now, we made a separate video about those coilovers and we had just finished installing them, but you should be able to still follow that sequence of events. Just get everything disconnected from the coilovers, take the old caliper off, take the rotor off, take the heat shield off, and then get everything installed just like we just suggested. Let's get on with the rear. In the rear of the vehicle, now you're going to remove the OEM caliper retention clip. Then remove the OEM caliper mounting bolts, and remove the caliper and parking brake assembly. Disconnect the parking brake line from the OEM parking brake assembly. Then finish removing the OEM rear caliper and mounting brackets. Next, you're going to remove the OEM rotor. Again, you might need a mallet to loosen this up. With the rear brake kit, you can maintain the OEM heat shield if you bend the outer edge to make sure that it does not come into contact with the R1 rotor. Now, R1's instruction says to remove this entirely by cutting it off, but we made it work just by bending it back. Clean any excess rust off the wheel hub. Remove the parking brake line guiding clip so that you can move the parking brake line freely. Now reroute the parking brake line behind the control arm. Now mount your R1 Concepts bracket using the hardware supplied and a shim between the bracket and the OEM mounting point. Tighten this hardware to 59 foot-pounds of torque. Attach the R1 parking brake device to the parking brake line. Apply Loctite to the parking brake device mounting bolts. Install the parking brake device by feeding the two mounting bolts through the bracket with the provided spacers between the bracket and the parking brake device. Install the main brake supply line to the parking brake device using the banjo bolt and washer sandwiching both sides of the brake line. Torque this banjo bolt to 177 inch-pounds. Do not over-tighten this bolt, it will break. Run the other end of the braking supply line to the OEM supply line, checking the layout of all brake lines to ensure there's no interference with any major suspension components. Place your new rotor with the curved vanes leaning towards the front rotation of the car. Apply Loctite to the caliper bracket mounting bolts. Install the caliper to the mounting bracket and torque the mounting bolts to 59 foot-pounds of torque. Install the caliper's supply line using the banjo bolt and washers, sandwiching both sides of the brake line. Torque this banjo bolt to 177 inch-pounds of torque. With the banjo bolt installed, make sure to tighten the nut that connects the banjo bolt to the stainless steel braided line. Use an 11mm box wrench to crack open the OEM brake supply line. Now remove the clip from the OEM brake line by pulling it out with pliers and then prying it off with a flathead screwdriver. Now you can finish disconnecting the OEM brake line, and you're going to drip fluid, so you might need some paper towels for that. Now you can install the R1 brake line through the top of the OEM mount and place the lock nut on the back side of the mount. Tighten this down with a 17mm and a 19mm box wrench. Now reinsert the brake fluid supply line into the R1 brake line and tighten down the fastening nut. Make sure to wipe clean any leaked brake fluid, and you've finished installing your rear system. Rinse, lather, and repeat on the other side.
Okay, so we've got all the components of our R1 Concepts Big Brake Kit installed on our Focus RS here, but there's still two major components of the installation project to do. Next up, we're gonna need to bleed the brakes. Now there's lots of videos on YouTube that'll show you how to bleed the brakes. You can do this yourself. You and a buddy can do it easily with a bleed screw, the nice little runoff tube, and somebody in the car pumping the pedal to move fluid through. So we're gonna do that next. And then after that, we're gonna do our brake bedding in procedure. Anytime you have new calipers, rotors, pads, anything like this, you need to get everything heated up all together and mated together so that all the metal is cured and the braking surfaces are paired to one another. So that process is going to involve doing 10 stops from 60 miles an hour down to 5 to 10 miles an hour, never coming to a full stop. 10 of those at about 70 to 80% of braking force. And the way that you gauge that is that 100% of braking force is going to engage the ABS system, which is going to judder and cause the wheels to keep moving instead of locking up. So you want to be just about 30% back from that level of braking, so you're getting a lot of heat into the surface. By about the 8th to 9th time that you do that stop from 60 down to 10, you're gonna start to smell the brakes smoking a little bit, and that's expected. That's normal. That is all of this stuff heating up and curing. Then you wanna let the whole thing cool right back down, and that's when you're gonna start to get optimal braking performance. Now, R1 Concepts does say you may have to actually repeat that procedure a second time to get up to the peak performance, but I think you're gonna find that with 6 pistons in the front and 4 pistons in the rear and these massive increase in size of braking surface area, this car is gonna stop like crazy, and we cannot wait to get that rolling. So if you want to learn more about the actual products themselves, check out the product spotlight video that we did. And as you can see, we've done ST suspensions, coilovers, and all of our white line sway bars and bushings for this application. Check those videos out as well. And of course, if you're looking for a set of R1 Concepts brakes, hit us up at Motoroso.com. You can call us toll free at 833-668-6767. And we'll put a link right here to head on over to our suspension video. Thanks for watching.